Hi, and welcome to Amy's Opinions. Today, my daughter Maggie and I are going to be talking about some of the latest news of bringing back dire wolves and other animals from extinction. And is this right or is this wrong? So, we're going to get started off by talking about this Dallas company. So, this Dallas company, Colossal, decided that they were going to alter the gray wolf genes and bring back the dire wolves that went extinct some 10,000 years ago because this was a good idea, and that was probably because mankind made them extinct. What they don't publicize is that they're messing with genes, first of all. These animals went extinct for a reason. And what type of predators they are. I mean, they don't have any prey that they would normally hunt and kill in today's world like they did 10,000 years ago.
I mean, I think that they microfauna for that same prey during the end of the
So, for anyone that doesn't know, my daughter is studying anthropology and political science. So, she's got more insights on this than I do.
concentration mainly in archaeology, but I also like looking at some bioanthropology.
So, my question is, this colossal company is planning on bringing back the dodo birds, which have been extinct for 300 years. Okay, well, I kind of see that because they were so stupid that we were able to hunt them to extinction. The Tasmanian tiger, which last known sighting was in a zoo in the 90s, even though there have been rumors sightings as late as the 1980s. But they're wanting to bring that one back. But my concern is they're genetically altering predators. We have all these movies, and I'm going to get into AI as well because to me this kind of combines things. We're increasing our AI use. We're bringing back extinct animals. Has no one watched The Terminator and Jurassic Park? What part of we're not God, we shouldn't mess with things that we don't understand? Do scientists not? I mean,
it does not end well for us. It really doesn't. And in cases like bringing back the dodo bird, what they're failing to understand is the dodo bird went extinct 300 years ago, meaning that its natural environment has changed over the course of the 300 years. And it might not be livable for them because they weren't around to adapt to those changes.
well, when we're bringing back these extinct animals, are they going to have a habitat that they're going to be thrive in, or are they going to have a habitat where they're going to start killing a bunch of other animals to include humans because we may not be the biggest prey? They were looking at bringing back the woolly mammoths. I think their timeline's sometime in 2028. Well, I'm sorry, but the woolly mammoths were around during the Ice Age when climates were a lot cooler. Where are they going to live at?
There's not that much vegetation that grows there, and they thrive off of vegetation. And yes, humans did help in them going extinct, but we weren't the only cause for why the animal like the woolly mammoth went extinct. They're not looking at the fact that our climate just can't sustain it anymore.
So let me ask you this. I know you're starting off in your college career with anthropology and things like that. Have you studied how humans get to be so populated and all of a sudden some big natural disaster happens and then the population goes down and then we build back up and then we go back down? Would you say that right now with advances in science, we haven't had that natural disaster? I mean, look at COVID. COVID, according to conspiracy theorists and other theorists and things, and what we're learning, was a biogenetically engineered virus that got loose from China. That was supposedly. I'm going to say supposedly because I don't know the facts on that one. I just know things that I've heard. And if you look at China in 2018, they had three doctors who were genetically altering a doctor who genetically altered three different babies trying to prevent them from catching HIV, supposedly, which goes against malpractice. So once we take one animal's genomes and we alter that to bring back something that's extinct, who's to say we're not going to alter human race?
When we've had those periods where a natural disaster will come, the human population will dwindle and then we'll build back up. We didn't go extinct, which is why that built back up. But if you're going to alter genomes of humans, you might impact things without realizing. Like you may impact their reproductive system, you may impact, all these other things that might be the issue for them to grow up and then potentially reproduce if that's what they want to do, or even you might cause them to die off earlier than they would have.
Now, let's talk a little bit about AI. AI is gaining a lot of popularity. You have Chat PT, GPT, where people are saying, "Hey, write this paper for me," which is cheating because you're not learning anything.
And then teachers have a chat GPT that can chat students first if it was used by chat GPT to write it.
So, that's a way of, come on. If you're trying to learn something, learn it, put in the work. But you also have AI, you have AI first. We're getting smart cars that can self-drive. We're getting, things for the houses that can control the lights and then control the houses, and they're making all these advances with AI. And it can be a good tool. I use it for this podcast because I don't know what the heck I'm doing with editing. So I use it to edit this podcast with sound and things like that. But again, have we not learned our lesson from the Terminator? They're talking some about AI with integrating it with human bodies for people who've had like paralysis to help them get to be able to walk again, or for hearing, things like that. Well, yeah, that's great. When does it become to the point that, again, we're playing God and we're going to look at the end of the world because the computers are taking over?
It's hard to learn a lesson from something that started off as science fiction because one argument is, oh, Terminator is fictional. It's also like maybe it's a warning too because yes, AI is great and it can do a lot of great things, but when students especially are now so heavily relying on AI to do things for them, you're becoming reliant on technology to the point where you're not going to be able to do certain things yourself anymore. You might end up, I don't know, you might end up becoming more of a slave to it than someone who just owns it.
Well, for instance, there is a movie, I think we showed you guys. I can't remember the name off the top of my head right now, but it was about this guy that went to cryo freeze. He woke up and it was the people got stupid. So, Idiocracy. There you go. That's the name of the movie. So, this movie was done back 2000, and they chose like the world's worst shoes, the ugliest shoes that they could find, Crocs. And sorry, Crocs, but your shoes are not necessarily the most stylish. They're very comfortable. Love them. I have some, but those are now popular. The president of the time came out and was waving his arms, and we've seen our elected officials do that. And we've seen, I know your dad and I have talked that we've seen some of the things in Idiocracy actually come to pass with politics, with clothing, with things like that. So I think movies, including sci-fi, comedies, whatever you want to say, I think there's a kernel of truth in every movie. People were in that movie were relying on technology to tell them what to do. Technology steered them wrong. They weren't self-sufficient. And I think with AI and technology, that's something that we have to be careful with, because if we're not careful, we're going to have a world where humans are dumb. We're getting stupid, not smart, stupid. We're relying too much on the tools instead of on common sense.
To me, even it feels like it's taking away our adaptability too. Because one of the reasons why we beat out the Neanderthals was because of our adaptability. Neanderthals, well, theoretically, they could have been smarter than us if they had a larger brain. They couldn't adapt the way that Homo sapiens. And if we start becoming too heavily reliant on something where it begins to take away our adaptability, that could cause massive problems. Yeah. We've survived as a human species this long just because we can adapt.
Well, and look at the American buffalo. Do we still have purebred American buffalo? No, they've all been crossbred with beef. Our bisons they're technically beefalo. That's how they survived. If you look at, your genes, there's a certain population that has Neanderthal genes in them. Neanderthals and Homo sapiens at some point crossbred, and we became a stronger person for it. So when do we look at these advances in science and we can do it, and when do we ethically say, no, this is going too far, this is playing God? Yes, God made us in his image, but we are not God. Well, even if they decide, like we release wolves into the wild and Yellowstone, I remember that.
But that was because we put them out of Yellowstone, deer population grew out.
But it still was not a good idea.
Yeah.
These animals are wild animals. And even if they're bred in captivity, they're still wild animals. How many thousands of years did it take us to domesticate dogs? But we still have dogs that attack people because ultimately they are still animals. So, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, I think as a population, as a human population, we need to take a strong look at one, hey, yes, we have science sci-fi movies where we said, hey, is this possible? And we took those ideas and we said, yeah, it's possible. We can come up with a way of making this happen. Would it be neat to see a woolly mammoth? When I was a kid, I would have loved to see a woolly mammoth, but I knew it wasn't possible. That the next closest thing I could see was an elephant. Would it be neat to see a dire wolf? Yeah, it would be neat, but it shouldn't be possible. You know, those prehistoric animals, there's not space for them to roam. The human population's taken over the earth.
Hey, why don't we bring back Homo habilis, Homo erectus, even the Neanderthal? Like, what if we can bring back all these animals? What's stopping us from doing that?
Or what's stopping us from altering genes? So I know in the past people have asked me, hey, you know, as a nurse, wouldn't it be nice if we could cure cancer? 100%, because cancer is a genetic mutation that creates a cancer. And it's our body's mutating and it mutates wrong. It would be nice if we could cure cancer. But what's this one thing I've said? If we cure cancer, then what's the next disease that's going to come along and wipe us out? Look at Ebola. That's a hemorrhagic fever. You know, we had the Ebola scare a few years ago. What if we wipe that out? Then what's the next thing? Look at COVID. There's going to be something worse nature's going to have to keep the populations in check. And, you know, I would love for cancer. Sorry, I have dogs on here that are just roughhousing. I would love for cancer to be, yeah, I would love for cancer to be solved and cured. I would. You know, we have cancer that runs in our family. We've had cancer friends that have had cancer. I would love for something like that to happen. But my concern is what would come next. You know, we have vaccines that have eliminated a lot of viruses like measles, mumps, rubella, but then we have people that come from other countries that have not been vaccinated that are bringing those back. And we have a group of people who are very anti-vaccines, and then they get exposed to those strains of measles, and their kids have, or mumps, and their kids have horrible outcomes because they haven't had the vaccine. But again, that's nature's way of keeping the population in check, you know? So we have a way of keeping us from being overpopulated and overpopulating the earth and wrecking our resources. But we're now going back and saying, let's bring back these things that couldn't survive because their natural habitats were being changed or altered, or they didn't have their prey items or their food items due to new species coming on. Or how is that right?
You know, they recently found an ancient virus in the ice, and people were worried that they were going to try to bring back that virus. Depending on how long it's been in the ice, it could have been something that affected the dinosaurs. Well, you know, but then why would we try to bring it back? You know, if it's gone, why bring it back?
Why are we? What I don't understand is why are we trying to play God?
Because we can do it.
Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should do it, though. Do I think having the technology to be able to let someone walk again or move again is great? 100% I do. But then do I think putting a chip in my head so I have a computer in my head that can tell me all the answers is wonderful? No, I don't. That's taking away my free will. So go ahead and put him down. My question is, from a standpoint, bringing back the dire wolf, that's cool. It's cool that we have the technology. Do I think it's right? No, I don't think it's right. Do I think bringing back the Tasmanian tiger or the woolly mammoths is right? No, I don't think that's right. I mean, what are we going to do next? Bring back the megalodon? Then no one would be safe in the ocean. Are we going to bring back dinosaurs? Are we going to bring back, you know, we've already had it seems like every generation we have an issue like, hey, should we clone this, should we do this, should we do that? We have the technology, but when do we say no, we're not God?
If we say no to bringing back like the Neanderthal or is that just because they're humanoid and they're hominid species? And if it's not okay to bring back extinct hominids, then why are we bringing back other animals that have gone extinct? When
Let,
you're looking at it, these wolves lived 10,000 years ago. And one of the reasons why they did go extinct is that they just couldn't compete with the other animals, like the gorillas and stuff.
well, let me point this out. If you believe in God, in the Old Testament we had Noah. What happened when people started playing God and going too far away from God? He flooded the earth and he wiped out a lot of people, lost civilizations. You know, Noah had to have the animals two by two, all that good stuff, right? He promised he wouldn't do that again. But are we breaking our promise to God by going so far away from God and going towards science and, hey, we can do this, so let's do this and let's play God?
Was initially started by the believers of God to explain how he did. And even in like ancient Greece, in ancient Rome, they used science to explain how their God did things. It wasn't this just happened, so there's no such thing as the gods, or no such thing as God. It was done to explain how they, like the gods and God did.
Right. And science used to be considered witchcraft. Yes, I believe to a certain degree, science is good. I believe antibiotics are good. I believe in trying to find cures for illnesses. I believe that. But when we start altering genes, I don't believe in that. Now, I can already hear people saying, oh, well, we just did this whole COVID vaccine and that can alter the genes and blah, 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 blah. Did I believe in the COVID vaccine? I'm going to be right here and tell you, no, I didn't. Did I take it? Yes, I did because of the job I'm in. Did I encourage my children to have it? I let my children make that choice. Do I believe in gene therapy? There are certain things I do. We have stem cell research that, hey, we can help that person with their own stem cells. Yes, but bringing back extinct animals, no, I don't believe in that. Do I believe we have to be careful with AI? 100%, because otherwise, who's to say human race won't be here in the next thousands of years is going to be computers. And this is going to be run by computers or cyborgs because we're getting into that dangerous territory of allowing someone else to take control of us. God gave us free will for a reason. Why are we trying to take our free will back? But that's not to say there's not something else that's going to come to wipe out the human species. I'm just saying, in my opinion, we're going too far. Well, already, we have a herd mentality. We complain about our politics, but we continue to elect almost the same officials. And sometimes we'll go from one extreme to the other extreme and back and forth. We follow the media with what the media says. We follow the stars now because the stars now, the movie stars and TV stars, they have a voice and, they may be popular. We follow TikTok, we follow YouTube, we follow all this other stuff. But ultimately, we have the free will to have our own opinions. I mean, that's what this whole podcast is about, is opinions. And, I know we've gotten into God and things like that and AI and dire wolves, and we really haven't talked too much about, hey, this was a really great scientific breakthrough to bring them back from extinction. It just is not morally, in my opinion, not morally right. Well, that's the whole purpose of bringing them back is then, hey, if we have something that's getting ready to go extinct, we can fix it. But if we have animals going extinct, why aren't we focusing on why are they going extinct? Is it because the humans have taken over their habitats? So therefore, if we bring them back, where are they going to live?
We need to look at the root cause, yes, of why they're going extinct, but we shouldn't be trying to bring back extinct animals when we have animals where we know what the root cause is and we can actually fix what that root cause is to help keep them from going extinct.
All right, so we're gonna end this episode of Amy's opinion. So Maggie, would you like to give your final opinion on the dire wolf coming back in AI?
I think we shouldn't be trying to mess with it. I think we shouldn't be trying to bring back extinct animals. We shouldn't be trying to bring stuff from the dead. And we shouldn't be trying to make it so AI does everything for us. There are reasons, while fictional, there are movies about it where, for instance, Jurassic Park, they brought back dinosaurs. What happened? Dinosaurs are wild animals. You can't control them. Terminator, AI took over. What happened? They were targeting humans and going after humans with human race. Like, yes, it's all fiction, but maybe it's also a warning.
Okay, so in conclusion, I'm going to end it with my opinion. My opinion is we've had great scientific breakthroughs. Do I believe in bringing back extinct animals? No. Do I believe that we can use the data that we have and maybe cure diseases? Yes. But then I also think there's going to be something else that's worse that we're going to have to face. And that's just something I have seen. Look at smallpox. Look at, we figured out how to fix that with smallpox vaccine from cowpox. Look at some of these the bubonic plague. We figured out we can give antibiotics and cure that. Now we have cancers, we have Ebola, we have worse viruses and diseases out there because we've progressed in our scientific knowledge. As far as AI is concerned, while it's a good tool, it should be a good tool to use to help learn, but not do the work for you. Because otherwise we're being reliant, and if something were to happen, we wouldn't be able to survive. Do I think that we're getting rid of farmlands and wildlands and overpopulating the world? Yes, I do. I think that until a massive natural disaster, illness, something brings the human population back in check, we are in danger of running out of resources. But, I also grew up listening to that. That's the whole Gen X thing we grew up listening to. Yeah, we're global warming, we're running out of resources, but we're also not keeping our population in check. So, in conclusion, while it's great scientifically that they brought back the dire wolf, morally, I think it's wrong. I think God gave us free will, and part of having free will is we're going to make mistakes. But on this one, I think there's so many different warnings from different movies, from books, from anyone with a threat, just a little bit of common sense that animals that have gone extinct, they've gone extinct from either habitat, which where they would live, either we've taken it over or the climate's changed, food sourcing, and maybe there's a reason why they've gone extinct. And while it's great to wonder about those, maybe it's not a great idea to play with genes. As far as AI is, I think that's great with different technologies to give people the ability to walk again, maybe to hear again, things like that. But as far as having it so you can just ask a computer anything at any time and be told, I think you're running the risk of losing our free will. So, in conclusion, that's my opinion and Maggie's opinion. Thank you for listening to us today, and have a good day.